What is up, YouTube? How's everybody doing today? It's your boy back with another video. A little bit of a different video today. Here I am at Barnes & Noble. I've been here a lot recently because I put myself on a reading routine. I like to think of reading now as kind of like going to the gym. I try to go at least 5 times a week, around that, and then I just come here or go to the library for a session. And it's not really about how much I read, it's just about getting in there and just getting the work done, finding something I'm interested in, and exploring those ideas. So for the first book, I read this in mid-September, Writing Tools by Roy Peter Clark. Very good book. The main idea I got out of this book was that writing should be for everybody. It shouldn't be exclusive to writers, and good writers shouldn't deter you from writing yourself, because writing is actually analogous with thinking. So if you think something and you like the thought, you should write it down, and that will solidify your thought process. If you want to take it a step further, you could practice speaking it like I'm trying to do right now. And it's just another form of repetition in order to really get the learning ingrained into your brain. So you get the ideas, or you find some type of insight from reading, right? Write it down and put it in your own words, because when it's in your own words, it'll be easier for you to remember it. And then speak it so you can easier communicate to yourself, or later on to other people, the idea that you're trying to communicate. So the idea I got for this video came from this chapter right here, Tool 2, Order Words for Emphasis. And at the end of the chapter, it gives you a little homework assignment here, and it tells you to read Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. And normally people don't do these exercises, they probably just read the book. But I actually went to read the Gettysburg Address. I picked up this little book over here, and this is where I found the interesting parallel that I will show you guys right now. Alright guys, so here we have the Gettysburg Address, and as I was reading through the Gettysburg Address, I noticed a slight similarity in phrasing between a speech that you guys may or may not know, but I'm not going to say what it is. You might know it from the thumbnail already, but I'm gonna read this, and then I'm basically gonna show the video in juxtaposition to this speech. Okay, so here we go. 407 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that the nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it, far above our poor power to add or detract.
Everything that you thought had meaning, every hope, dream, or moment of happiness, none of it matters as you lie bleeding out on the battlefield. None of it changes what a speeding rock does to a body. We all die. But does that mean our lives are meaningless?
The world will little note, nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here, dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion.
Does that mean that there was no point in our being born? Would you say that of our slain comrades? What about their lives? Were they meaningless? They were not! Their memory serves as an example to us all! The courageous fallen, the anguished fallen. Their lives have meaning because we, the living, refuse to forget them! And as we ride to certain death, we trust our successors to do the same for us!
That we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
Because my soldiers do not buckle or yield when faced with the cruelty of this world! My soldiers push forward! My soldiers scream out! My soldiers rage!
November 19th, 1863. Alright guys, I hope you liked that little interesting parallel. If you guys watch Attack on Titan, you know that a big theme within that show is freedom. So it would make sense for Isayama to use the Gettysburg Address and then paraphrase it into his own work. And that's why Commander Irwin's speech has such a resonating value to people, because it is something that is in history, it is something that is ingrained in the idea of freedom. And basically, this got me thinking into the concept itself. So I wrote a little bit of stuff down, and now I'm going to be speaking my own thoughts. Alright. Freedom. Freedom. Liberty. Everybody talks of freedom as if they know what it means, but at its core it is not that easy to understand. We attach freedom to its counterpart, slavery, which is also a vague concept. People talk of past slavery as if they are living in it now, because the ideas take a longer time to fade than the physical forms. But slavery and freedom are not concepts that can be confined to race specifically. It is something that speaks to all of humanity. From the perspective of history, we live in the most free society ever. If, however, we described it as the will to choice. Freedom is a tyrant unto itself because it will never cease to be satiated. Freedom speaks to the individual. It is personal, the will to autonomy. This nation was founded on principles such as God and freedom, but it seems God has been done away with, and with that comes a detachment from traditional values and ethics. Freedom has become nuanced and hard to determine where equality must be fought for. Since in the modern era, most beings are now autonomous, but Western culture is still ruled by this idea. But the idea itself is what has allowed equality on any front to be pursued. We want equality of opportunity, we don't want equality of outcome. The reason for this is because when we get equality of outcome, it will be one individual at the expense of another. Oppression is everywhere, but the greatest oppressor is the fight for equality on all fronts. It is a fight against life itself in all its unfairness. This resentment has been built up against God, but how could you be resentful against something that you do not believe in? Somewhere along the line, we lost the reason to fight for freedom, but the idea still looms large in our thoughts and actions. Freedom is meant for all, but it is also personal perspective and extremely individual. What I mean is that all people can agree on human intrinsic value and work for autonomy for all. However, now that people are generally free to make decisions and have this autonomy, we have turned against each other in pursuit of our own selfish freedoms, using freedom as a front to obtain power over the oppressors of society. Equality for all just means socialism when we go beyond autonomy. It is a community with individuals rather than a community of individuals. The tyrant of freedom rages against historical perspective and the virtue of gratitude. This resentment has been built from narrow views of the information we are fed. Truth is assumed and not sought. So when an idea that has done so much good to allow people to become individuals, it is not questioned when it is fought for on any front. A society without questions is a prideful society. Freedom allows people to become individuals, but when its purpose is lost, it becomes an ideological tool for power, and then we find new forms of slavery. Those who think rule over those who do not. Without context of freedom, we live in the idea of slavery, constantly pursuing equality. When the pursuit of equality goes too far, and this is not easy to depict, then we become less individual and fall into the rhetoric of those who preach freedom under the guise of making everyone think the same. Alright guys, thank you for listening to my spiel, and I'll see you guys in the next video.
海の向こうには自由がある。ずっとそう信じてた。でも違った。海の向こうにいるのは敵だ。何もかも親父の記憶で見たものと同じなんだ。向こうにいる敵全部殺せば俺たち自由になれるのか。